Excuse me. Hello, Anne, Stella, Howard, Phil, Joanna, Sue, Nanny Short Arms, Laura. Lovely to see you all there. We'll wait just a few moments for one or two more to gather. Hi, Anne. Hi, Alice. Hi, Sue. I love the way we describe kind of where we are and how we are via the weather as well. It's definitely, the sun came out for a minute or so earlier, which was lovely, but it's blustery and a little bit chilly and a little bit overcast here. Not exactly what I would call classic summer weather, but that's all right, isn't it? Anyway, it is indeed midday. It's Friday. I know we did something on where the time goes last week, but that time has gone quickly again. It's good to be back and welcome. Thank you so much for gathering again. I hope you are doing okay. I'm sure you will have experienced all sorts of different ups and downs this week, but within it all, how wonderful that we can gather, reconnect with God, with ourselves, and via this wonderful medium with each other as well. We might just for a moment pause to sense actually our community and our connection, a community and a connection that is joined through the love of God, through loving God and through God's love, isn't it? It kind of flows both ways, and we'll think about that today actually. So let's be conscious of not just a network of people, but a community, a family, a communion of people today. And just to say, if we lose connection at any point, we still have a full complement of family and children here trying to do homeschooling and things like that. So sometimes the internet takes a bit of a hit. If we happen to go down, I'll come back within 30 seconds, I promise, or I hope. So just kind of stay where you are and look for the box to go live again. In my news, thought I'd update you briefly. Nutmeg the rabbit continues to thrive. She's now learned to burrow. There are one or two holes emerging in the garden outside as she digs for freedom. I got my hair cut, and apparently it's taken years off me, which is great. And what about that moon this week? Did anyone else see the full moon rising at about 10 o'clock on the nights when it was visible? And I think it was Jupiter and Saturn that were also visible close by. What an incredible sight, and just a wonderfully evocative reminder of the cycles of God's creation of which we are a part. And I just very briefly wanted as well to update you on how I am doing health-wise, just because I've mentioned it once or twice, and quite a few of you have been asking me about it, and I didn't want to focus particularly on my own health, because these are occasions that are about you and about God and about our connection. But I just wanted to mention in passing at the start of this that we did have a mild case of COVID at the start of lockdown. And that was fine, that passed. But it's been really the post-COVID symptoms that have particularly impacted my wife and I in different ways, but both to quite reasonable degrees at times. She has been very short of breath and lots of fatigue. I've had lots of muscle pains and aches, and just felt very strange, often a bit of a brain fog, and feeling very tired and lacking in energy. So it's been quite a struggle at times, and it seems to go on and on and on. You know, it's gone on for a few months now, and I wanted to mention that in part just because people have been asking. I mean, we're okay, we're fine, we're getting by, but it's a bit like trying to drive with the handbrake on. But I'm sure that for many or most of you, you don't have to have had COVID to have been affected by it, and whether it's physically or mentally or emotionally, spiritually, or a combination of those things, I'm like this is going on and on and on, and it's hard to see an end in sight. The good news is that this week we have both physically been feeling distinctly a little better. I feel as though I've definitely got some energy back now. So we're really hoping, it tends to sort of come back and then kind of the symptoms come back again, but we're really hoping that this time we're turning a corner. And I just want to share that with you as a little glimmer of hope that this too will pass. Whatever situation you're in at the moment, keep going. This too will pass. So I'm going to light a candle just to shine a light for set the study on fire now. Shine a light for all those of us who just feel as though it's been going on and on and on. But let's shine that light and remember that this too will pass. And how amazing that actually we've had each other and others that we know and love, I hope, as well as God's love to sustain us along this particular path. Good. So this week I came across a lovely guy called James Finley. Some of you might know him already. He's a clinical psychologist who is a member of faculty with the Centre for Contemplation and Action, Richard Rohr's organisation in the United States. I don't receive Richard Rohr's daily emails. I expect a number of you will do. I don't get them because often his work is so close to mine, and I can end up just wanting to repeat absolutely everything he says. So I kind of just discreetly steer clear and just read his books, which I love. But Tim very kindly sent me this wonderful email reflection this week, written by James Finley through the Centre for Contemplation and Action. And you might have read it, but he speaks in it about the beauty and power of a simple pause. And elsewhere, I mean, I followed him up a little bit, and elsewhere he talks about the practice of pausing as being like the diver who's on the high diving board and who walks out to the end of the diving board and pauses. And he says it's in that moment that the diver allows himself to, or herself, for the ego just to quieten down, to forget about the crowd and everything else, and to dive from out of that pause. And it's a lovely analogy, I think. He says, he just talks about remembering the beauty and power of the pause in our day-to-day life. There's all sorts of pauses that we can take, aren't there? Of course, we just had a wonderful, but just savouring kind of that pause of doing nothing for a few moments. We get a lovely pause here. There's a building site kind of in the field down here, and we get a lovely pause every now and again where the work stops. And that kind of feeling that when it all goes quiet for a few moments and you just sort of draw really deep. I love listening for the pause, as T.S. Eliot wrote, between two waves of the sea, or the pause, the space between notes of a melody that give the melody its definition. I wonder what kind of pause really helps and feeds you. Perhaps if you wouldn't mind sharing one or two in the comments, if you're able to write a comment, what kind of pause in a day feeds your soul? I ask you because I'd love you to reconnect with that, as you go away from here today. But it'd be wonderful just to read one or two, if you can pop a word or a phrase or a sentence down. There's that pause before a meal, whether you say grace or just perhaps pause to breathe and just prepare to eat. or the pause as well before sending a difficult text or email, rather than just kind of throwing something out. Not speaking as soon as you've thought of something, Paula, that is incredibly, that is real wisdom. That is real wisdom. And I know Paula, and I know that comes through her life. Weekly pause for prayer at my beach hut, Linda. Wow. Thank you. Can you tell us where it is? We'll come and join you. The pause, what kind of pause do you love? The moment you sit down to write, Sue. The pause is between thoughts. Hazel's cat reminds her to take a breath and enjoy physically connecting with a stroke. Absolutely. So keep those coming. Our actions flow best, don't they? Our actions flow best when we learn to dive from out of the pause. So let's have a short pause now. You might like to close your eyes and take a breath. For a few moments, let's connect with the stillness that lies behind all of our thoughts, all of our actions. That same stillness that connects the waves, the two waves of the sea, that sits behind and within the notes of a melody, that gives Paula's thought some space before it may or may not be spoken. Just for a few moments, relax into that stillness, that pause now. Isn't it amazing that in a sense this stillness is there all the time, even behind the noise of the building site or the noise of our thoughts, the busyness or otherwise of our schedules. So we pause. And stay in this quiet space for a moment. You might like to just continue with your eyes closed. As James Finley says, there's the practice of that pause, and then there's a slightly different kind of practice which almost leads on from that, which is where we move into the space of dialogue with God, the back and forth, the reciprocity, the sense of communion, of being with. And he explains an incredibly simple but really profound practice that helps us into the deeper place of being with God. And this is about inhaling and exhaling. It's about our breath. So first he says, which is all around us and within us. I hope I didn't buffer there. If I did, I'll just say that line again. We sit and remember that we are sitting in the presence of God, the presence which is around us and within us. And then as we inhale God's silent, I love you, he says. God's silent, I love you, in which God is being given away to you as the miracle of your very being. Isn't that beautiful? So I would love you just for a few moments to focus on the in-breath, okay? Don't worry about the exhale, although do exhale, of course. Some lovely deep inhales, and on each one, inhale God's silent, I love you. I love you. I love you. And you are drawing deep of God's love as you breathe deep of the air around you. And then when we exhale in love. I love you. We exhale, in a sense, he says, ourself in love, as we say, I love you. So let's focus on the exhale for a few moments now. Exhaling ourselves in love. I love you. It's reciprocity with God here. I love you. I love you. Now, why don't we put those two together very simply? Inhaling God's I love you and exhaling ourselves in love to God. I love you. And so we are breathing along with God. I love you. 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 And even within this moment, he says, you may have been distracted, or feelings of insecurity or anxiety can arise simply because we remember something that we've been feeling anxious about within that moment. And he says, that's absolutely fine, because the beautiful thing is that within our anxiety, we breathe in God's I love you. And we breathe out ourselves in anxiety as much as in faith. I love you to God. And so even in that context, we have this just wonderful continuous breath and communion with God. And he says that gradually this practice can help us to learn about the wisdom of love. We sit with this practice, he says. We lean into it again. We hold fast to this love that sustains us in the midst of things. It's in this way, little by little, that we come to understand the depthless beauty of the infinite love of God. And isn't this entirely what everything boils down to in the end? So perhaps today, thinking about the pause that you love, that you draw deep from, you might consider, number one, what you can just gently add back into your draw deep and to feed your soul and to provide the space, the pause from out of which you can dive. And secondly, perhaps you would just make a note in a diary of another time today in which you can just do that breathing exercise, inhaling God's silent I love you and exhaling yourself in love with I love you to God. And I hope that you'll find that as helpful as I found that this week in just returning me intentionally to that intimate place of communion with God, within God's love. Lovely. Why don't we say the Lord's Prayer together? Our Father in heaven, hallowed be your name. Your kingdom come. Your will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Give us today our daily bread. Forgive us our sins as we forgive those who sin against us. Lead us not into temptation, but deliver us, please, from evil. For the kingdom, the power, and the glory are yours, now and forever. Amen. Thank you so much for joining me. This midday moment is a pause in my week that has helped to sustain me, knowing that we are here together, and I hope that it has continued to sustain you. A blessing from Tess Ward to end with, if that's okay. May the earth beneath my feet be the path that you will bless. May the air around me that I breathe be as the sustaining of your spirit. May the wave on the shore be as your returning mercy new every day. May your protection keep me safe under the dome of the summertime sky until I dwell in peace under the heavenly arch of my eternal home. Have a good week. Whatever you are doing, remember to breathe. Remember to pause. Every blessing to you. Thank you for your presence here today. And until we meet next week, go well.